Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Board Gaming Doctor. My name is Phil, and I'll be your Board Game Doctor today. In this video, I'm going to go over my top 10 games that start with the letter B. This is all in effort to re-rank my collection, meaning the games that I have played and own, and using the criteria that you will see that I've decided to apply to all the games that I've have played and rated before. I wanted to do this in preparation to make a top 10 games of all time and see where I stand with that. So here are the honorable mentions. There are 29 games, unique games that I've played that start with the letter B. And some of them, are old-time classics like Betrayal, Balderdash is a fun game. Some of these are a little bit lower, perhaps, than what other people might think. Boon Lake, Brazil are good games according to some, but not my favorites. Barcelona, Blood Rage as well. All-time classics, or at least Blood Rage is. Barcelona is a newer game that is highly regarded, but not quite by me, I suppose. I still give them pretty good rankings, and so anything above a 7.2 is what I will list, I guess, for my top 10 games of that start with the letter B. So let's get into number 10. So number 10 is going to be Beyond the Sun for me. I think this game is a really good game, and a lot of people do so as well. It is in the top 100 games of all time on Board Game Geek. You essentially are developing this tech tree, which serves as a worker placement spread, and you're using these worker placement aspects to build out your own tableau, build up a engine of resources, and apply those onto a shared map as you explore the cosmos, essentially. So this game is a fairly mid-weight Euro game that has a good amount of variability when it comes to the tech tree and the cards and the different spots and different types of cards that you can use per game, and that element of discovery makes it pretty fun. I think if it looked a little bit better and if the theme appealed a little bit more to me, I would regard it a little bit higher. But still, I quite enjoy Beyond the Sun, my number 10. Number 9 is going to be Rosenberg's Bonanza. This is his first major title that made it out onto the board gaming scene. It's a card game where you collect cards, you plant them in front of you, and collect sets of them for points. And the gimmick of the game is that you can't rearrange your hand, and so there's an element of playing the cards at the right time, as well as some player interaction to getting and bidding for or negotiating for the cards that you want. And so because of that, I think this game has a lot of replayability and fun involved in it. And I've had games of this where it can get pretty raucous, but I do feel that it doesn't have as much of that replayability in the long term, which is why it's a little bit lower down on my list. I think it's a good game, but I have had a few plays of it where it has kind of fallen flat. And so if you play this with the right group, ones who are willing to really trade or really wheel and deal ya, I think this game could be a lot more fun and kind of fit a more party-esque type of scene and provide that fun. But it's I think a little bit player and group dependent, and so for that I have this at my number 9 spot, but still a really good game. That's Bonanza. Number 8 is going to be Bus for me. This is an older game by Splotter. It's one of their first, I believe. And in this game, you have a lot of player interaction in the fact that you're using worker placement to place out routes and get people onto buses, essentially. There's this weird zany time track that also is used in this game, and it kind of serves as a very interesting and interactive version of a Splotter game. Now, since then, I believe there are games that I have rather enjoyed more than Bus. I do enjoy the approach that Splotter games have when it comes to player interaction and strategery, but I think Bus was a great place to start, and it's on the lighter end of their games. And so if you want to dip your toe into what Splotter games have to offer, I think Bus is a great way to do so. Number 7 is Beer Pioneer. This was a hidden gem from 2023 that was nominated for the Kennerspiel, I believe, last year. And I played this on Tabletop Simulator and thought it was quite good. And so if you think of popular games like Viticulture, Distilled as well, this is kind of a similar game where it's a midweight Euro game where you are thematically brewing beer and trying to sell them for points. And so I really enjoyed the mechanisms and how they brought together the theme. I thought this played pretty well. pretty quickly, considering what kind of game it is. And I think it's worth giving it a shot if you do enjoy these types of games like viticulture and kind of a different approach to that theme as well as those mechanisms. So give Beer Pioneer a try. That's my number 7. Number 6 is going to be Bunny Kingdom for me. So this is a Richard Garfield game from 2017 where you draft cards with your opponents and use these cards to play out your units onto a shared map, and you're basically going for area control. It's a very interactive game that has really easy to learn mechanisms, and the rules kind of stand aside as you learn the game strategically based off of what each card does and how it interacts with a shared board. So I like to think of this game as a card drafting version of Terra Mystica, very lighter version of Terra Mystica as well. and so it's a really cool game. It's available on Board Game Geek to try. There are a lot of expansions for it and promo sets that offer more variability as well, but even in the base game, it's been interesting to play. I haven't gotten back to it very much. It did leave a very good impression with one play for me, but I quite enjoyed it and think this game has a lot of potential to rise for me. So that's my number 6, Bunny Kingdom. Number 5 is Bruges. This is a Stefan Feld game from 2013 that feels a lot different from his other titles, but perhaps, not including Hamburg, of course, which is the re-implementation, but there will be a game on the next episode of this series that I think, from Feld, that I think is very kind of similar to what I enjoy about these games, which include a lot of different cards, a lot of flavor and individuality in the cards that you have for each of these townsfolk, and you're doing a couple of Feld types of things mechanically by interacting with different facets of the board. But unlike games like Trajan, where each separate area of the board feels like a mini game in and of itself, I feel like things are a little bit more interacted with each other and intertwined, I should say. And so I feel like this is a more thematic version of a dry Euro, and it features a lot of individualized cards, and for that, I offer it a pretty high score. So that's my number 5, Bruges. Number 4 is Beer and Bread. Now, this is a lighter game by Scott Alms, a 2-player only game where you are drafting cards to gain resources and play beer and bread onto your tableau and to produce them for points. 2 things that make this game unique is one, the cards are multi-use, and so you can use them to be the beer and bread that you're producing, or you can use them for resources to pay for other cards, or to use them as upgrades as well to make different objectives for you to score points at the end of the game, to hold more resources, etc. And so I really enjoy this game because it's pretty fast and easy to play. I think there's a lot of variability with the cards. You see a handful of or you don't see a handful of cards by the end of the game. For a full game, you can get through pretty much the entire thing. But I like the variability that is in place, partly due to the nature of the multi-use of these cards, the multi-use nature of these cards, right? And I do quite enjoy this game and highly recommend it. I've talked about it ad nauseum on this channel, so check out those other videos if you want to learn more about Beer and Bread. Number 3 is Barrage. So this is a very highly rated game, very heavy game as well, where you are utilizing worker placement to gather the resources that you need to build onto a shared and very interactive map. There's a lot of blocking, a lot of siphoning water from these barrage or these dams to your own stations to be able to garner power and to hopefully grab enough power to fulfill the objectives that you need every turn to get points, right? And so it's a very difficult game to learn, but I think once you do understand the base mechanisms, it's not too difficult to start to understand the strategy. And this is a game that does intimidate me a lot. It is on Board Game Arena, and so it kind of falls in the same category as a lot of really interesting games and heavy games that I would like to get better at, but I haven't had the energy or the willpower to do so quite yet. But this is definitely high on the list for me to really explore. I've played it a bunch of times and do enjoy what I have learned thus far, even though I am probably not very good at this game. It is, a very highly interactive Euro game that I think has a lot of potential to be played at a very high skill ceiling and strategic level. So that's my number 3, Barrage. So the silver medal for me goes to Black Forest. Now, this might be a surprise, considering I am a huge fan of Rosenberg games. This didn't quite make the top of my list, but it's still a very excellent game. I just recently had a play of this with 2 other friends with a 3-player game, and I really enjoy the interaction of this game. The variability is not as high in this game because of the uh, display of buildings at the start of the game. Sure, they are randomized, which offers a little bit of variability from game to game, but I think this kind of falls under the same replayability umbrella as very open sandbox games like Fields of Arle and A Feast for Odin, and so there's a lot of potential and replayability there. It's not a terribly difficult game to learn, especially if you know Glass Road, but even if you don't, I was able to teach this game pretty quickly, and everyone was able to really get into the strategy of this game and understand the different components of and mechanisms of this game. So I'm really impressed with how this game has been developed. Having a more complex approach to what Glass Road is, and if you look into the history of this game, it was a game that was developed, and Glass Road kind of developed off of that and fit what the publisher wanted. But then now, years later, we finally have what I feel the original version or vision of Glass Road, of what that was supposed to be, from Rosenberg. And so I'm glad that we do have this now. It is, there are other games I think that I would rather play compared to Black Forest, but Black Forest is up there when it comes to Rosenberg games. But it's not my number 1. Can you guess what it is? So my number 1 has to be Brass Birmingham. Now, I lump Brass Lancashire here, but I own Brass Birmingham, so I'm more likely to get this game played. Now, it is the number 1 game of all time, as according to Board Game Geek, and I'm not simply trying to follow the crowd or anything. I truly do believe that Brass is a masterpiece of design and has a lot of the elements that I look for in a game that I'd want to play over and over again. It kind of fits that right weight in terms of complexity, and I think a lot of the complexity comes from the strategic avenues or the different ways that you can do well in this game. And really, the rule set is quite simple. If I would say that Glass Road, or rather Black Forest's rule set, is more difficult to understand than is Brass's. So I really appreciate the simplicity and streamlined design, yet it offers so much layered complexity and depth of strategy as you start to play this game. I have a lot more plays of Lancashire than I do with Brass Birmingham, but I think I really enjoy Brass Birmingham for the added variability that we have with the beer locations and where those will be located from game to game, in addition to the cards that you get, the starting hand that you have and what you will draw into. And so there might be a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the game-to-game differences, and I enjoy that. And I think Lancashire is a little too tight to for my tastes. It's still a really enjoyable tight game, but I think the slight flexibility that Brass Birmingham offers is a little bit more up my wheelhouse. Now, it's a very interactive game. There are lots of positive and negative interaction in terms of blocking spaces out from other people if you want to build there first, or send your resources to market and to take advantage of the economy in that regard. But also, if someone else is there, you can use that city to use each other's coal and use each other's buildings that are in cities to build your routes and continue on trying to build up your own game. And so really enjoy that interactive aspect of this game. If this had an easier digital implementation, I know that I would be playing this consistently. I think Brass is a fantastic design. I think it's deserving of its ranking on Board Game Geek, and it definitely fits in some of the top positions of my personal top 10 lists and top games of all time. So, yep, that's Brass Birmingham for you, my number one game that starts with the letter B. Thank you for joining me and making it to the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed this list, and let me know what your favorite games are that start with the letter B. On that note, I hope you schedule an appointment with me real soon. Thank you for consulting with me, and hopefully I'll catch you on the next one. Take care.